Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to be my review of the upcoming Summon Showcase. It's another Gala Dragalia remix, this time around featuring Kimono Elisanne and Kimono Luca. We also have Gala Mym making her return as the featured Gala character on this remix showcase, and the showcase lasts a couple days only, 3 days total I believe. So you're going to have to make a decision on whether or not you want to summon on this relatively quickly, and that's why I'm releasing this video now before we even know some of the details on these characters, such as their SP costs and their damage modifiers. I've tried to lean a little more toward releasing these should you summon videos earlier than later as of late. Another reason is just that people do summon day one, even though I try to advise waiting and saving your resources to summon at the end. A lot of people do like to summon as soon as characters are available, and I can't fault them for that. These characters are obviously very exciting looking and very compelling for those who are looking for reasons to summon. As for me, I have to say, unfortunately, this one is definitely a skip for me, and I'm going to advise that most of you out there skip as well. The reason it's a skip for me personally is just if you saw my summoning session for Seimei, we were in a world of hurt after that summoning session. Little did I know just how much hurt we were in though, because for whatever reason, it wasn't really on my radar. It wasn't even a consideration that there would be more New Year's characters like these kimono alts. Last year we got yukata characters, but it was in the fall and toward the end of summer even. So the fact that we got these characters now completely caught me by surprise. Our last Gala Dragalia showcase at the end of December featured only Gala Zephyr. It didn't have any other adventurers on it at all at a rate up. So the fact that now on a remix that only lasts 3 days, we get 2 brand new characters when we didn't get anything new then, man, I was not prepared. I already wasn't prepared for the Seimei Yoshitsune split banner into Persona collab with Gala Shell probably happening at the end of this month, likely being either a crucial or just really good unit for Legend Kaiyan that's coming out at the same time. So yeah, I'm not going to be summoning for lack of resources. The reason I would recommend against summoning in general is pretty much the same. I think that you're going to be pretty crunched on resources if you went for either Seimei or Yoshitsune, and the Persona collab, the main reason I would say that's probably worth saving for more than something like this is that there's no indication here that Elisanne or Luca are limited. Based on how this is written, it sounds to me like they will be permanent. It even says they'll appear in the next Summon Showcase. Usually that's going to mean that they're permanent. And even though they appear in the next Summon Showcase, they're typically not at an appearance rate up on the next Summon Showcase. But that indicates that it's not just the next one, but all subsequent ones as well, that they are permanent. That's how I tend to read this. If characters are limited time only, there will usually be a big disclaimer here saying so. So I do think that Ellie and Luca are both permanent here. So for that reason, even though it's not easy to snipe permanent characters off focus in the future, I would say with these 2 characters, you're just going to have to hope you pick them up one day down the road or maybe dream summon for them. Since when it comes to Persona, I just don't know if there's enough time left in Dragalia's lifespan that we would ever see that rerun. We haven't seen Monster Hunter or Mega Man rerun, those obviously being borrowed from Capcom. And so the fact that Persona is owned by a different company compared to Fire Emblem, obviously it's Intelligent Systems, but very close partner and works directly with Nintendo, it kind of makes sense that Fire Emblem got rerun. The other collabs, Princess Connect might because it's owned by Cygames, but I don't expect third-party collabs to necessarily ever come back. And that can be really significant. We saw with Monster Hunter that Feline Hospitality, one of the worm prints from that collab, super essential for some of the high-end speed comps nowadays. We still see characters from the Fire Emblem collabs like Veronica being used in cheese clears, Marth being used in certain speed runs, and Mega Man's co-ability was super coveted until Seimei came out, and now there's finally a replacement for that. So I think the fact is that with this collab, Joker, any of the characters that are featured might actually be really good and potentially essential for quite some time. We don't know that yet. It's possible they'll go the way of Hunter Berserker and really not see all that much use, or Hunter Vanessa. Maybe they'll be more like Hunter Cerise, where they're fine, have an interesting shared skill, but don't do much else. But essentially, the potential is there that some of those collab characters are going to be so lucrative and so essential to the meta comps that develop in the future that I think you're better off saving and going for those. And even though we'll likely get some free stuff at the time of the collab, right now a lot of us, and myself included, are so far in the hole as far as our Wormite situation that realistically I think you're probably going to want to save for the collab. So that's my take on this. And for that reason, I will likely be skipping the gala at the end of this month as well. Gonna be hard to do that if there's other characters there I really want alongside Chell. And I do want Chell, but I think I'm just gonna have to skip it, same as I did with Leonidas. So for me right now, the outlook on summoning is potentially going for Yoshitsune with some of my resources I have left, and then saving everything for Persona. So as for this showcase in particular, there are good characters here. I think Elisanne and Luca both look good. It's just the context in which they've arrived makes it hard to recommend summoning. And now let's go over Elisanne and Luca themselves, and we'll also talk a little bit about Gala Mym and where she's at today, how she compares to other adventurers, and what kind of comp she fits into. So starting with Kimono Elisanne, Happy New Year, let us celebrate this fine day together. Obviously, beautiful kimono and portrait. You have Cleo here, you have Mym, so fans of all three of these adventures might wish to collect Elisanne for their collection and add her to their halidom. Eager to enjoy a quiet, reflective year-end, Elisanne dresses in the finest of traditional New Year's kimonos from Hinomoto, but fate has other plans, and what follows is a whirlwind of altercations, accidents, and awkward. Alright, you already know she has a great adventure story based on that. Her skills are Lady Nonpareil and Lucky Day. Her co-ability is unique, HP on revival plus 30%, and her chain co-ability is unique as well, combo equals critical rate 5 for flame. Her abilities are Good Tidings 2, Sleep Res 100%, and Skill Prep 100%. So let's start with the abilities. Sleep Res is a fine ability, probably about on par with Stun Res, maybe a little bit better. One thing that tends to come up with Stun Res characters, especially melee characters in Phase 1 of Volk's Wrath, is that those shuriken that he throws out, they can put you to sleep. So that's a problem if you're Stun Res, but if you're Sleep Res, you might not even notice that. You might intentionally take those for potent Sleep Res, for example. So I would say this is probably on net a little bit better than Stun Res. Stun Res, the big advantage to that would be you could use the character off element against flame bosses, because flame bosses also cause stun in addition to wind bosses. Skill Prep 100%, actually kind of notable. This is an ability that I would say in the old days, Skill Prep, while it was good and helped you speed up easy content, it wasn't that good against hard content, because fights still tended to last a really long time. And maybe for healers, characters like Halloween Lowen that really want to get out their HP buffs and have tight rotations in the beginning of fights, like back in the day, Master High Midgard Stormer was one such fight where having skill prep helped. Nowadays, I would say skill prep has kind of gotten better with these different cheese comps. Having that built in gives you a lot of explosive potential, and you don't have to waste 2 Wormprint slots on getting up to 100% skill prep, or a Wormprint slot plus a Void Weapon. And it's actually kind of rare. In the Flame element, you have Valentine's Hildegard, you have Naveed, and then you have Halloween Lowen with 75% skill prep. And I can't really think of too many other characters that have skill prep built in. For stuff like Time Attack as well, having skill prep built in was pretty valuable. I think in the final high-ranking clears, it ended up not being used too much. People just used Wormprint slots for it instead. But if you were kind of in the mid-range of those rankings, then it was pretty valuable, and at the very least, it would help you get the class rewards, if not the rank rewards. So this is an ability that I would have never really acknowledged as significant, but once Time Attack rolled around, I actually started researching into it and trying to see, okay, who all does have skill prep? How can I kind of take advantage of this? So maybe this will actually come into play for Elisanne somewhat. Okay, so her ability Good Tidings 2 grants one of the following effects based on the level of the user's New Year's prayer. Level 1 increases skill gauge fill rate by 7%, so basically skill haste 7%. Level 2 is skill haste 8%, level 3 skill haste 10%, and gradually fills Lucky Day's skill gauge automatically. Abilities that increase skill gauge fill rate will not affect this automatic increase. Okay, so we're going to have to find out what New Year's prayers are and confirm which skill is Lucky Day. I think it's her second skill, so let's skip to those. Yeah, Lucky Day is her second skill. And Lady Nonpareil is what gives the New Year's prayer effect, so let's start with that, her first skill. Grants flame-attuned adventurers in the team the New Year's prayers effect. Continually tapping the screen while charging this skill will grant New Year's prayer up to an additional 2 times to each adventurer. Interesting, so you could get up to 3 stacks of New Year's prayer, and I guess when it says while charging, perhaps the skill animation is kind of a charge up, and you have to keep tapping until you get all 3 stacks. Otherwise, when I hear charging, I think of while the skill gauge is filling up, so I think it's upon cast you want to tap. New Year's Prayer has 3 progressively more powerful levels. Level 1 for 15 seconds increases strength by 15%. Level 2 for 30 seconds increases strength by 25%. Level 3 for 60 seconds increases strength by 40% and reduces wind damage taken by 15%. Wow, that's pretty significant. If New Year's Prayer is granted while already active, it will be raised 1 level. Conversely, it will be lowered 1 level when the effect's remaining time is depleted. If the effect is at level 1 when its time is depleted, it will instead be removed entirely. Okay, so this is interesting. I can't tell, but like the size of these buffs makes it seem like you would have to continuously tap a lot to level it up. It actually says that it's granting it an additional time, but the way I read that is that additional times would translate to higher levels. If it's actually 3 separate instances, because they say tapping grants it an additional time and each instance could be leveled up to level 3, that would be too strong. So the way I interpret this is, let's say you cast this, then for 15 seconds you're going to increase Flame Adventurer's strength by 15%. If you keep tapping as you're casting it and you get to that level 2, then instead you have this 30-second buff of 25%. And if you keep tapping and you get to level 3, then you get the highest buff with 40% strength and wind damage reduction of 15%. But let's say you don't have enough time to just keep tapping, you stop at level 2, then if you cast this skill again and you're still at level 2, I think you get upgraded to level 3. That's kind of how I understand this to work, and when 1 level runs out, conversely, it will be lowered 1 level when the effect's remaining time is depleted. So if, 60 seconds pass and level 3 is depleted, then I think you get 30 seconds of level 2. This seems really strong. What I have to assume with how this works, just based on how strong this is that you can't stack like multiple instances of this. Otherwise, I think this would be really busted, or maybe it just has a super high SP cost, but the fact that Elisanne has skill prep is supposed to make up for it. Having something like this in combination with overdamage, which has become quite popular lately and scales off of the user's strength that casts it, could be very strong as well. This is a significant strength buff, and one of the benefits of overdamage, as I understand it, is that you tend to cap off on strength buffs, but overdamage is a way of passively dealing extra damage even when your strength buff is capped out. Yeah, this seems really explosive and strong. It's also long duration, I should say. Like, it's explosive in the sense that it's a large amount of buff, but it lasts a long time too. I would assume that you could probably have full uptime on this on longer quests that last, more than a minute. So this seems quite good. The disadvantage being, with somebody like Emma, let's say, you could potentially cast with all her buff time that she has, you could probably stack her own first skill a couple times and maybe get, 50% strength buff to your team instead. But this looks like maybe a little bit easier to manage, the fact that you have such a long amount of time, and when this runs out, it goes down a level, or you could just increase it a level by casting it again. I don't know, this seems really good to me, and now we understand how New Year's Prayer works. So So basically, depending on the level of your New Year's Prayer, you're going to get some extra amount of skill haste, and you're going to gradually fill your second skill. So let's read the second skill. Lucky Day deals flame damage to the target and nearby enemies, inflicts Scorch Rend, and lowers their Scorch Rend res by 10% for 30 seconds. This resistance reduction will not stack. Seems fine. This could have a really low damage mod, though, similar to Halloween Melsa, because she kind of had same type of effect, but for poison. The fact that it does Scorch Rend, and Scorch Rend is still relatively rare, only appearing on Seimei, Gala Leonidas. I do think that this looks pretty good to me, but right now, Scorch Rend has the issue that the only Affliction Punisher print for Scorch Rend is a 5-star print, and it's, I think, 25% Punisher. So you're sort of just better off running Burning Punisher. If there was a 4-star Scorch Rend print or 4-star Burning Punisher print, then all of a sudden you could see more double Affliction Punisher comps actually relying on both Burning and Scorch Rend Punisher. It's just too hard to fit in multiple Affliction Punisher prints into the 5-star slot. There's other competitive prints like Weapon Skill Damage, Flurry Strength that you want to have on most characters, so I think that Scorch Rend really hasn't hit its peak yet, and even though we saw some changes coming to Legend with off-element dragons being restricted, there was no such restriction put in place for off-element shared skills, so I still expect to see Frostbite showing up in full force in Legend Volk. So this seems okay, but I don't really see, capping off on Scorched Rend as that much of an issue that really happens, and not a lot of people are going to be using Scorched Rend Punisher, so this just seems okay. Like this, if this dispelled or something, it might even have more utility than it does right now, because as things stand, it looks like Elisanne is not dealing a lot of damage herself. Her primary function is to buff her team, and so her, giving Scorch Rend, I don't think you're going to have a high damage over time on that. So she's more of a utility character from what I see here. Her kill ability isn't HP plus 15% like most lances, instead it's HP on revival plus 30%. Increases the amount of HP an adventurer revives with by 30%, benefits your whole team. Alright, unfortunately the revive mechanic is like a space that you never really want to be in, because you can just retry a quest, and when you revive you potentially lose some survival bonuses. So the fact that they're developing around revive, it's a downside space that you don't really want to be in. It's to mitigate loss. This is just not a co-ability I ever see being used, except for the fact that the chain co-ability actually looks kind of good. So the chain co-ability combo equals critical rate 5. If a team member is attuned to flame, increases their critical rate by 1% for every 10 hit combo. This effect can stack up to 20 times, but all stacks will be lost when the combo counter resets, benefits your whole team. So yeah, her chain co-ability, potentially a 20% critical rate right here. That to me is more significant than just her co-ability. 20% critical rate is a lot. You see players using Serena in backlines. Sure, she does have Dragon Haste, and with Gala Mars as strong as it is, that is sort of relevant as well. But one of the functions that Serena serves is basically just hits 10 equals, I think, 12% critical rate. And it's kind of like you get more critical rate off of her than you would a dagger backline, which is only 10%. Well, this is 20%. If you can maintain that long of a combo, if you can stack a 200 hit combo, you have 20% going forward. And even though Volk will do some moves like his teleport early in the match that make it hard to keep up a combo, Flame has combo time on its weapon, on its Agito weapon. Flame has combo time backliners like Azalith and Nobunaga. Nobunaga standing out since strength is universally pretty good backline. Even Azalith is a pretty good backline, but sometimes, sometimes you might not want that extra critical rate. But basically, all that to say, there are plenty of characters who can maintain a full combo. Through teleports, I'm not sure. I have to think about whether I've ever done that before. I'm not sure how well you can maintain a full combo through the entire teleport sequence that Volk does, but either way, after that, from that point on in the match, you should be able to maintain a combo in like Legend difficulty the rest of the way, and in Master, Volk never does his teleport mechanic, so outside of Squalls, if you don't freeze that or something, you should be able to maintain a full combo. Even during squalls, there have been definite times when I've kept up a combo in the middle of squalls with either a ranged character or by closing in relatively quickly as the squalls are about to end. So this is a really strong amount of critical rate to have. As other element stuff gets closed off and we see more mono element content, one of the things I've lamented about Flame is there's no inspiration user in Flame. That's something I really wanted to see for Incognito Nefaria because she can stack up a lot of critical damage on herself, but unless you're using Horus, you don't have an easy way to guarantee she deals critical hits. And with something like this, I see some potential. I see some potential with her. I'm not all sure who else would want to use this. Unfortunately, it comes with this co-ability that doesn't really do much, but Dragon Haste was already kind of marginal. It's definitely not totally insignificant in a longer fight because Mars is a really good dragon. Maybe you could get out an extra Mars in a long fight, but this co-ability itself, some quests like Legend doesn't even have revives, at least Master has revives. Notably, this isn't element locked, so for other elements, you could throw this co-ability in, but in solo play, like everything else about Elisanne, is designed around supporting flame units. So, unless you're trying to solo an off element Akito with a flame team, an entire flame team, then throwing Elisanne in doesn't really make sense. Yeah, I just think this co-ability is not very good. It's in the vein of Halloween Melsa, who had that really bad ability related to revives. Unfortunate, but otherwise Elisanne looks pretty reasonable. I could see her being used in like solo clears of Legend Volk or something like that. I think a lot of players might be leaning towards solo going forward because of Gauna and Krenna being shut off from Legend Volk. So maybe for some players this will make it a little bit easier to have her on the team. Alright, next up, let's talk about Kimono Luca. Stick with me again in the new year, and what is going on in this portrait? Look at Cerise's expression. You have Not here as well, and then in the left side there you have Ronzel, but in the front there's a Pipple, what looks like a Pipple charm, and I have to assume these are oxen, because of the Year of the Ox. But as a Texan looking at this, I basically see somebody that's bull riding. That's what it looks like to me. This looks like a rodeo type of thing. I guess that's my cultural analog and touch point with what's happening in this scene. But as for Luca's description, Luca dons a kimono to enjoy a Hinamatoan New Year's to the fullest. Whether it's spinning tops, playing Karuta, or pounding mochi, he's all in on year-end fun. It's going to be so wild. Luca's roping in everyone at the Halidom. So, by the way, I've yet to fully check out the Coliseum event and story, but very excited about that. I saw the first chapter, and Luca and Elisanne both had a role. Makes total sense why they're here on this banner. As for Luca, he is a wind axe, so there's a lot of other wind axes out there, and those include Ronzel, obviously was on the picture with Luca, but also characters like Summer Amane, who's a healer. You have Johanna. There are others as well, so Luca enters into a somewhat saturated pool of characters, with Ronzel really standing out, and Lin Yu also really standing out, but for sort of different reasons. Lin Yu probably best in the player's hands, able to do a lot of good damage with critical damage double buff, and if you're controlling her, she does a lot of damage. Ronzel just being really good for auto in particular, especially having access to Dispel, Poison, Life Shields. So I think Kimono Luca is going to have to do something sort of special to stand out here, and let's take a look. So we'll start with abilities again and work our way up. For abilities, Pounder of Mochi 2, Freeze Rest 100%, and Force Strike attack rate plus 20%. So Narrow Last ability just speeds up the animations for Force Strikes. Freeze Res, probably a little bit worse than Bog Res on the whole. Gonna help you with the Ice Beam rotating laser attack that Ciela does, but ideally if you're autoing, you can kind of just tank your way through that. If you're playing manually, you shouldn't get hit by that. It's possible to always avoid with your lead character at the very least. So yeah, I don't really see Freeze Rise as having a high upside for wind characters. Pounder of Mochi 2 grants the user a unique Force Strike that reduces the strength of surrounding enemies by 2% for 10 seconds and will continue to attack as long as your finger touches the screen. Interesting. So it sounds kind of like Manicaster Force Strike or maybe Seime's Force Strike or something like that. In addition, every time this Force Strike or the Splendid Spring skill hit enemies a total of 9 times, the user will be granted the Mochi Master effect. The Force Strike strength reduction effect can stack up to 4 times, and Mochi Master can stack up to 3 times. So strength reduction can stack up to 4 times, so that means a total 8% strength reduction maximum. And every time the Force Strike or the Splendid Spring skill, which is your first skill here, hits enemies a total of 9 times, the user is granted Mochi Master. So this doesn't explain what Mochi Master does just yet. For co-ability and chain co-ability, Luca's a lot more straightforward than Elisanne. Decent co-ability, it's something that does come into play in autos. There are some tight situations with your Templar Hope leads. They can die, potentially, especially if you're trying to do Gold Fafnir autos, so having extra defense doesn't hurt. The chain co-ability having extra water res also sort of fine, but nothing special here, nothing like makes Kimono Luca a backline must-have for co-op or anything like that. Let's read Splendid Spring. Deals 1 damage to surrounding enemies, and dispels 1 buff from each of them. Continually tapping the screen during the attack will unleash additional blows up to a maximum of 6. Interesting. So it has a share cost of 6, and notably, I didn't say this about Elisanne, she has a share cost of 6 on her lucky day too, but no reason I see to share that. It's not like you're trying to reduce Scorch Run res very often. With Splendid Spring, the Dispel makes it an interesting candidate for sharing and also having additional hits. Some of these skills like Ramona's and Lathna's that have additional blows do a lot of damage. So there's some potential that this just has really good mods for the damage that it deals. Also, having Dispel is kind of convenient, kind of nice to have. But this does 6 additional blows, and I guess like one question here is, this has to hit 9 times to get a Mochi Master stack. So one question is like, how much initial hit does this do? Does this do 3 hits? When it says deals 1 damage to surrounding enemies, is it like a spin attack that does 3 hits and then every additional tap is going to do an extra blow up to 9 total? Or is this like 1 hit into 6 more, which is 7, and you actually have to multi-hit enemies or hit multiple enemies to get 9 hits or more? I think it probably is 6 additional and maybe does 3 by default or something. Like that would make more sense to me as far as how this lines up, but that is something to kind of watch. Having Dispel is good. Ronzel has Dispel in his first skill though. It's shareable for free. It's only causes Dispel and Poison when you Mana Spiral him and upgrade it though. So it's a little bit costly, but I think Ronzel probably still good enough for most players. Bright Equinox grants when the Toon Adventures in the team the New Year's Mochi effect. New Year's Mochi effects are based on the number of Mochi Master stacks consumed. Okay, so this is where the Mochi Master stacks come in. If you consume 1 for 20 seconds, gradually recovers HP and reduces water damage taken by 3%. 2 for 30 seconds, gradually recovers HP and reduces water damage taken by 5%. And 3 for 60 seconds, gradually recovers HP and reduces water damage taken by 15%. This skill can only be used when the user has at least 1 Mochi Master stack, and using it will consume all Mochi Master stacks. New Year's Mochi will not stack. Very, very defensive here with the HP regen and water damage reduction, on top of, the co-ability, chain co-ability, both defensive, Pounder of Mochi reducing enemy strength. I mean, it seems to me like this is a character that's more designed for auto than anything else, or perhaps for Legend Ciela when that comes out. Maybe she just does so much damage with her vulnerability stacks that you need some of this reduction to actually be able to survive. That was my theory about Master Ciela originally, that you're going to need some damage mitigation, because she was just going to deal so much damage, and she can, especially in co-op if you're not prepared for bolts from above and rebounding arrows. You can get caught off guard easily and quickly die. But looking at Kimono Luca, outside of speculation about Legend, like just for Master difficulty, I don't really see... I mean, I see some potential here. The damage reduction's nice, but Ronzel's life shields are really good. And also having one poisoner is kind of nice. Right now, some of the comps that are used for Master autoing and soloing will include Silas potentially. Silas, another poison source, of course, reduces strength as well. They might include Lowen or Grace, and then Templar Hope in the lead slot. I've also been able to use Mine to reasonable success. But essentially, let's see if I can share this here. I think the hump right now with Ciela and autoing that on Master difficulty is how many gold Fafnir's can you cram in? Because you could definitely auto it. This is my auto team right now that I use. And this works with 2 gold Fafnir's consistently, or fairly consistently. Once in a while, Templar Hope will die. And probably because I don't have Garuda, but I found Freya to be pretty good. This is the team that I personally use. I've also tried subbing in Silas instead of Mine, but I kind of like the skill haste on Mine, the combo time. And since I have Lowen for max HP buffs, I don't really need Silas for max HP buffs as well. Mine, I think, also has Bog Res. And the idea behind this comp is also defensive buffs plus double buffs, stacking critical damage, as well as these, prints like Dear Diary and prints like Kung Fu Masters that give you a nice critical rate to access some of those double buff stacks. So this is what I personally use, and I'm able to cram in 2 gold Fafnir's. I've tried going up to 3, like having 1 on Ronzel. And with 3, like, it's just too inconsistent. Sometimes it times out. Usually nobody dies. Like, Ronzel's not at risk of dying, but I just get to the 10-minute mark and I haven't killed the boss. For whatever reason, this has worked well for me. Even with Freya, was able to get some auto clears with 3 gold Fafnir's. So basically my question when I look at a character like Kimono Luca is it going to change anything if I brought it into this comp? And I think the only answer to that is going to depend on how much damage he's able to do. Obviously, for damage mitigation purposes, probably around the level of Ronzel, maybe a little bit weaker, not having the life shields, but he does reduce enemy strength a lot. He also dispels, just like Ronzel. And so I do see potential. If you, for whatever reason, don't want to invest in Ronzel, you could invest into this Luca potentially. But as of now, I don't see this necessarily being a game changer here. Maybe it would make the Expert Ciela more consistent with 4 gold Fafnir's as well. That's another consideration. But just looking at things, I think on net, probably about on par with Ronzel. So I don't really see a reason to go for Kimono Luca. And finally, that brings us to Gala Mym. So without going into as much detail, since Gala Mym is a returning character, she is one of our earlier Gala units. I think she was the 3rd released after Cerise and Ronzel were released. Her Dragon's Claw is nice as a shared skill, and does pretty good damage on her as well. Deals flame damage to enemies directly ahead, and increases the user's strength by 20% for 10 seconds, but most importantly, for sharing purposes, raises the dragon gauge if the attack connects. Not many shared skills can do this. You're basically looking at hers and Yuden's. Her second skill, Flames of Passion, deals flame damage to enemies in a line. I think before 2.0 that used to deal extra damage if you'd already shapeshifted, and this is the first time I noticed that actually changed. Her co-ability, HP 15%, and then her chain co-ability, Dragon's Claw 6. Dragon's Claw's really good chain co-ability for characters that are in a longer fight and want to shapeshift frequently. You only need to shapeshift 3 times to make the most of this, so on a character like Yuden, it's a really nice backline character to have. Gala Mym and Yuden kind of serve similar roles though. With Yuden, he can kind of slot into Gala Mym comps because he can provide burning, which is something they lack. And just like them, he's a dragon-oriented character. He can shapeshift relatively quickly in a match. Her abilities are Flame Worm's Nature 2, Flame Worm's Defiance 2, and Dragon Time 20%. Dragon Time, of course, kind of self-explanatory, but Mym, because of her Flame Worm's Nature 2, always shapeshifts into Brunhilde, regardless of what dragon she's equipped with. Her strength is increased by 15% for the remainder of the quest when she shapeshifts for the first time. Here it is. And Flames of Passion is powered up for the rest of the quest, so that is still part of her kit. The second time onward, she will transform into High Brunhilde instead, and her attack rate while shapeshifted will increase by 15%. And also, this reduces her susceptibility to burning by 100%, which is more of a flavor thing, but does keep with most Gala characters having dual resistances. In her case, it's to stun on her second skill, and then on her second ability, and burning on her first. Her second ability, Flameworm's Defiance 2, reduces susceptibility to stun by 100%, and if she's hit by an attack that would have stunned her, the skill gauge for her first skill, Dragon's Claw, fills by 50%. After activating, it won't activate again for 15 seconds. Honestly, a lot of little details here that I had forgotten about Gala Mym, but the application for Gala Mym, at least one application, is pretty consistent. Expert Volk, 40-second to a minute clears. There's a popular comp I've posted on the channel. I'll card out to in the corner if you want to watch a video of that. But there's a popular comp for Expert Volk that is pretty easy to replicate, uses Gala Mym. For higher difficulties, I would imagine you could probably do something similar on Master, but I think there are preferred cheese comps that are more consistent or a little better. Probably not too hard to do, but the main reason it works on Expert so well is it helps you get through that first phase, which is otherwise kind of time consuming. In Master, you don't really have that difficulty. And for Legend, I think you could use Gala Mym. She was part of my team in my first clear that I ever did of it, but it wasn't like particularly exceptional. Legend's a little tighter. You want access to Dispel, you probably want access to some Infliction enablers, you want high DPS characters like Azalith. So Gala Mym, being a kind of more slow ramp character that builds up over time, isn't particularly great for Legend, but I think she's perfectly usable. So my overall opinion of her is she's good, but again, not a must-have. And that's kind of where I stand on the whole summon showcase. This showcase is one I would have loved to be able to summon for, just for having these Kimono alts. Thankfully, they are permanent. I hope I'm able to pick them up in the future. But it is going to be a skip, and that is my recommendation to all of you out there as well. If you're a brand new player and you have your free summons every day, those don't save up, those don't accumulate, so make sure to use those daily when you log in. Otherwise, I would probably save my resources for the future. Anyway, y'all, that is going to do it for today, everyone. Thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.